She never expected that one simple business meeting would change everything she thought she knew about her past. The woman, named Alina, had walked into the billionaire's office with nothing more on her mind than a standard work proposal. It was supposed to be a routine afternoon, a quick presentation, a polite handshake, and then she would leave like every other guest who entered that towering glass building. But destiny had prepared something so unusual, so deeply personal, that it would stop her breath the moment she stepped inside his office. It began the moment she pushed open the polished wooden door and stepped into the billionaire's private workspace. The room was massive, elegant, and intimidating, filled with rare artifacts, awards, and photographs that told the story of a man who had conquered the world. Alina tried to focus on her purpose, rehearsing her pitch silently inside her mind. But then her eyes wandered for a brief moment, and that was when she froze. There, placed inside a silver frame on the billionaire's shelf, was a photograph she recognized instantly. It wasn't a famous picture. It wasn't a public ad or a magazine cover. No, this was something far more personal. It was her. A picture of her as a little girl, no older than 6 years old, wearing the same bright yellow dress she remembered from her childhood, smiling nervously at a camera she barely understood at the time. That photo had been taken in an orphanage she had lived in for years. Her heart began to pound so loudly that she could barely hear her own thoughts. For a moment she wondered if her eyes were playing tricks on her. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was a girl who simply looked like her. But no, she knew that picture too well. It was the same one the orphanage had used for her file. The same one she remembered because she hated that yellow dress at the time. The same picture she had believed was lost forever, but what was it doing? Here, in the office of a billionaire she had never met? She stepped closer, forgetting entirely about her meeting, her pitch, and even her own name. Her emotions twisted between fear, confusion, and a strange pull she couldn't explain. She reached out slowly, almost afraid to touch the frame, as if it might disappear. Then she heard footsteps behind her. The billionaire entered the room, quietly watching her. He didn't speak at first. He simply observed her reaction, his expression unreadable. Alina turned sharply, flustered and apologizing, but he raised a hand gently, signaling that she didn't need to explain. He knew exactly which photo she was looking at. He had placed it there for a reason. What she didn't know was that he had been waiting for years for someone to walk into his office and recognize that picture. And now, finally, he approached slowly, glancing at the photograph before turning his eyes toward her. There was something deep in his gaze, not cold, not intimidating, but familiar in a way she didn't understand. She felt strangely seen, as if he knew something about her that she herself didn't know. For the first time in a long time, she felt vulnerable. He asked her a simple question, one that shook her further. "Do you remember when that photo was taken?" The question hit her with a force she didn't expect. Why would he ask that? Why would he have her picture? Why did he care? She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. She managed a quiet yes, but her voice was trembling. She explained that she had lived in an orphanage for much of her childhood, and that the photo was part of her official records. The billionaire listened carefully, his eyes softening with every word. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, so heavy it felt like the air had turned solid. Then he said something that made her knees weaken. "I've been looking for you." Alina felt her stomach drop. The room suddenly seemed smaller, the air thinner. She could hardly process the words, and a chill ran through her body. She stared at him, waiting for an explanation, a reason, anything that would make sense of this impossible situation. But he simply looked at her with a mix of relief and sadness, as if he had finally found something or someone he had lost long ago. She searched his face, trying to understand. Why her? Why would a billionaire search for someone like her? And how did he even get her photo? But before she could ask anything, something strange happened. He reached to the shelf and picked up another frame. This one held a different photo. A young woman holding the hand of a little girl. The woman was smiling warmly, and the child beside her was unmistakably Alina. Her breath caught again. She didn't remember this picture. She had never seen it in her life. But the woman next to her in the photograph felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain, a gentle pull in her memory, a warmth buried deep beneath the years of loneliness and uncertainty. The billionaire's voice was quiet, but firm as he held the frame toward her. That woman was your mother? Alina felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She tried to speak, but her entire body felt numb. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. She stared at the woman in the picture, beautiful, graceful, holding her hand like a mother would. But Alina had no memory of her, no name, no face, nothing. She had always been told her mother abandoned her, that she had no one, that her past was empty. But now this man, a billionaire she barely knew, was telling her something entirely different, something life-changing, something that didn't align with anything she had been told. She felt tears sting her eyes, confusion gripping her chest. She wanted answers. She needed them. She needed to know why this man had these photos, how he knew her mother, and why he had been searching for her. But before she could ask, he said one more sentence and that would change everything she believed about her past. She didn't abandon you. Someone took you away. The words echoed in Alina's mind with a force that made her entire body stiffen. Someone took you away. She stared at the billionaire, trying to understand what he meant, but her thoughts were racing too fast to catch. She had grown up believing she was abandoned, unwanted, forgotten. It was a story she had forced herself to accept because it hurt less than imagining anything worse. But now, in this spacious office, filled with secrets and memories she didn't know were hers, the truth seemed far more complicated and far more frightening. She took a step back, her voice barely steady as she whispered, "What do you mean someone took me? Who? Why?" Her heart felt like it was trying to break free from her chest as she searched his eyes for answers, for something that made sense. But the billionaire didn't rush. He didn't panic. He simply exhaled slowly, as if preparing himself to open doors he had kept locked for years. He told her that years ago. Her mother had been caught in a dangerous situation involving powerful people. People who didn't want her to reveal something she had discovered. Her mother had been trying to protect her, to keep Alina safe from threats that came from the shadows. But one day, everything went wrong. Her mother disappeared, and Alina, only a toddler at the time, was taken away before anyone could understand what had happened. The orphanage she ended up in wasn't chosen by chance. It was meant to hide her. Alina felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. The room around her dimmed, as if the truth was pulling her into a place she wasn't ready to face. She tried to explain that none of this matched what she had been told, that the orphanage had claimed she was simply found on the street, abandoned, with nothing. But the billionaire shook his head, saying softly, "That was a lie. A lie someone needed you to believe, so that you would never go looking for the truth." Her knees weakened, and she lowered herself into the nearest chair, unable to stand under the weight of the revelation. Her memories were scattered, faint flashes that never made sense before. She remembered the orphanage staff always avoiding questions about her past. She remembered the way the paperwork seemed incomplete, even confusing. But she had never imagined something as dark as this. She couldn't. It was too painful. She looked back at the billionaire who watched her with a calm, steady gaze filled with something she couldn't name. Was it concern, regret, guilt? Why did he care so much? He moved closer, sitting across from her. His voice softened as though he understood her fear. He told her that her mother had worked for him many years ago. They weren't just connected. Through some random photograph, her mother had been a key part of his life and his business. Someone he trusted deeply. Someone he owed everything to. Alina blinked, trying to process every piece of information. She asked him if he knew her mother personally, if he knew what really happened to her. He hesitated for the first time, a sign that he was walking into painful territory. Then he nodded. He told her that her mother was intelligent, strong, and loyal. She had discovered something dangerous enough to threaten powerful individuals. She had tried to protect the billionaire, warn him, and protect her daughter at the same time. But before she could fully expose the truth, she vanished. When the billionaire discovered she had a daughter, he spent years searching for her, hoping to find answers through her. But records were erased, trails were cut, and everything pointed to a deliberate attempt to bury every trace of the woman and her child. Alina felt tears forming again. Not because of fear this time, but because a tiny part of her, one she had locked away for years, began to hope. Hope that she hadn't been abandoned. Hope that her mother had loved her. Hope that there had been someone searching for her all this time. She asked him why he didn't find her sooner, why he didn't come for her when she was little. He admitted that he tried desperately, but every lead went cold. Whoever took her had money, influence, and connections, more than he had at the time. And by the time he finally got access to the records he needed, she had already grown up, changed her name, moved cities, and built a life far from where she started. But then she asked him the question that had been burning inside her since she saw the photo. Why did you keep that picture? Why was it in your office? His eyes lowered for a moment before he said something unexpected. Because your mother made me promise something. She told me that if anything ever happened to her, I must find you. I must protect you. She said, you would need answers one day. And I promised her I would never stop searching. Alina covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed by emotion. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She had fought for her. Someone had taken her away before she could be saved, but something still didn't add up. One thing lingered in her mind like a shadow. The billionaire didn't just know her mother, he seemed emotionally connected to her, in a way that went beyond a professional relationship. There was a softness when he spoke about her, a quiet sadness that suggested a deeper bond. Before she could ask, his phone suddenly buzzed on the table, making both of them jump slightly. He looked at the screen, and for the first time since she arrived, his expression changed sharply. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately locked the phone. Alina could tell something was wrong. Very wrong. She asked him what happened, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up and walked toward the window, as if thinking of the safest way to tell her. When he finally turned around, the seriousness in his eyes filled her. With fear, Alina, he said slowly, someone just found out you're here. Her blood turned cold. Alina felt her heart stop for a moment. Someone found out she was there? How? Who? She stared at the billionaire, waiting for him to explain, but he looked genuinely unsettled. It was the first time she had seen him lose even a fraction of his composed, controlled behavior. That alone terrified her. If a man of his power, wealth, and influence was worried, then whoever had discovered her presence wasn't someone ordinary. She stood up slowly, her voice trembling as she asked him who it was. He hesitated, then walked back to his desk and unlocked his phone, showing her only a glimpse of the message. She didn't see the sender's name, but she saw one line that sent a shiver straight through her spine. The girl is with you. We're coming. Her mouth went dry. It felt impossible. She had lived her whole life thinking she was invisible, unimportant, unknown to the world. But now suddenly she was the center of something dangerous, and she didn't even understand why. She asked him what this meant, and he finally began to explain what he had avoided telling her earlier, years ago. Her mother had uncovered illegal activities run by a group of powerful businessmen who operated under the radar, using their influence to manipulate politics, finances, and even law enforcement. They were untouchable, hidden behind layers of legitimacy. Her mother, working closely with the billionaire, had accidentally stumbled upon evidence that could destroy them. The moment they knew she had this information, she became a target. And because she had a daughter, Alina, they saw her as leverage. Alina's stomach twisted. She couldn't believe that her life, which had felt painfully simple and quiet, was built on a past soaked in danger. She asked him if her mother had survived, if she was still alive somewhere. His silence answered before he even spoke. He told her quietly that all signs pointed to her mother being killed shortly after she disappeared, but no body was ever found. The group had erased every trace to avoid suspicion. Alina felt a wave of grief she had never allowed herself to feel. Real grief. Grief for someone she had never known, but who had loved her enough to protect her against unimaginable danger. But before she could fall apart, the billionaire placed a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder and told her something that shocked her to the core. "They never stopped searching for you either." Those words paralyzed her. She had been living her life freely, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. She had gone to school, worked normal jobs, met friends, all while thinking she was just another person in the crowd. But someone somewhere had been tracking her movements, waiting for the right time. And now that she was standing in the office of the one man her mother trusted, they knew exactly where she was. She couldn't breathe for a moment. Panic clenched her throat. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere safe to go. She looked at the billionaire and asked him what they wanted from her. Why would they come after her when she knew nothing? He explained that in the final days before her disappearance, Alina's mother hid a piece of evidence, something so important that it could expose the entire network. The location of that evidence was never found. The only clue her mother left behind was a message indicating that she entrusted the last missing piece to someone unexpected. Someone no one would think to look for. Her own daughter. Alina felt her knees weaken again. She didn't remember anything from that time. She didn't have any object, any memory, any secret message. She was only a small child. What could she possibly have that these dangerous people wanted so badly? She asked him how he even knew this, and he told her he had spent years piecing together the fragments of her mother's files, journals, and encrypted messages, trying to understand what happened and why she was taken. Everything pointed to one simple truth. Alina held the final clue. Whether she knew it or not, a loud noise echoed through the hallway outside the office, and both of them flinched. It wasn't just a normal sound. It was heavy and sharp, like the thud of a door being forced open. The billionaire quickly moved toward the security panel on the wall, typing in a code that locked the office door. His voice became low and urgent as he told her they didn't have much time. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She clutched her arms tightly as if trying to hold herself together. She asked him what they were going to do. He said he had a safe room hidden behind one of the large decorative panels, but reaching it would be risky if the intruders were already inside the building. Another noise, closer this time. They weren't just coming, they were already there. The billionaire grabbed a small device from his drawer and pressed a button. A hidden panel slid open behind a large painting on the wall. Behind it was a narrow passage leading deeper into the building. He told her to go, but Alina hesitated. She didn't want to leave him behind. There was too much she still needed to know, too many questions unanswered. But he insisted, saying that her safety was the priority. He promised he would join her as soon as he made sure the office systems were shut down so the intruders couldn't track them. She took one step toward the passage, but paused when she heard something that made her freeze completely. A man's voice from the hallway. "We know she's in there." Open the door. Her blood turned to ice. The billionaire's face paled. He looked at her and whispered urgently, "Go, now." Alina forced herself to run into the hidden passage, her heart racing so violently she thought it would burst. The panel slid shut behind her, leaving her in darkness, alone, shaking, and terrified. She pressed her ear to the wall and heard the office door being hit again and again. Then a loud crash. They had broken in. She held her breath as she heard footsteps and muffled voices fill the room she had just escaped. She couldn't make out the words, but she knew they were searching for her. Searching with deadly intentions. And then she heard something else, something that made her entire body go cold. A single gunshot. The gunshot echoed so loudly through the hidden passage that Alina felt the vibration in her chest. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her body locked in place, fear gripping her like a vice. She pressed her palms against the cold wall, hoping the silence afterward meant the billionaire was still alive, hoping it wasn't him who had been hit. But there were no voices, no footsteps, no second shot to give her any hint of what had happened. She forced herself to take a breath, shallow and trembling, and moved slowly down the dark corridor, her fingers brushing along the wall for balance. Panic followed her like a shadow. She kept imagining someone breaking through the panel behind her, reaching out to grab her in the dark. The silence in the passage didn't comfort her. It made every second feel heavier, more suffocating. She whispered the billionaire's name, hoping he would call back. But the darkness swallowed her voice. The passage turned sharply to the right and narrowed. Alina's hands touched a cold metal surface. A door. She pushed it gently at first, then harder until it creaked open into a dim storage room filled with unused furniture and boxes. Dust floated in the faint light from the small ceiling vent. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Leaning against it as she tried to steady her breath, she needed a moment to think, but her mind refused to slow down. She had spent her entire life unaware of who she truly was, unaware of the danger tied to her existence. And now she was alone, trapped inside a building with men who wanted something hidden in her past, something she didn't even know she possessed. She felt like she was standing in the center of a storm she never saw coming. She took a few shaky steps toward the center of the storage room. Her hands were trembling as she reached for her pocket, pulling out the only thing she had brought. With her that day, a small keychain she had carried since childhood. A worn piece of plastic, simple, unremarkable. The orphanage had told her it was found with her when she was brought in. They said it was probably just a toy. She never questioned it. But now, after everything she had heard, she couldn't help. Wondering if it meant more. She held it tightly, feeling every scratch, every edge. If her mother had hidden something with her, something important, could it be this? Could something so ordinary carry something extraordinary inside it? Before she could investigate further, a noise outside the storage room snapped her back to reality. Footsteps. Slow, methodical, too close. They were searching the passage. Alina quickly moved behind a stack of boxes, crouching as low as she could, forcing herself not to make a sound. Her heartbeat felt like thunder in her ears. She held her breath as the footsteps stopped right outside the door, then the doorknob turned. She squeezed her eyes shut, panic rising in her chest. The door pushed open with a long, creaking groan. She heard the intruder step inside, heavy boots pressing against the dusty floor. He moved slowly, checking corners, scanning the room. Alina kept herself hidden behind the boxes, pressing her back against the wall as hard as she could. The intruder paused for a moment, as if sensing someone was there, and her entire body froze. Then something unexpected happened. A loud alarm started blaring in the building, sharp, aggressive, designed to force evacuations. The sudden noise startled the intruder. She heard him curse under his breath, then rush out of the room. The moment the door shut, she let out the breath she had been holding for what felt like hours. The alarm was deafening. But it meant one thing: the billionaire was still alive. He must have triggered the building-wide security system. He hadn't been shot, or if he had, he was still conscious enough to fight back. Alina knew she had to get to him. She couldn't leave him behind, not after everything he had done. But she also knew the intruders would use the alarm as cover to escape or regroup. She needed to move fast and carefully. She stood up and made her way to the door, pushing it open just enough to peek outside. The hallway was empty, but the flashing red lights and warning buzz made everything look even more terrifying. She stepped out quietly, keeping close to the walls, moving toward the direction of the billionaire's office. As she approached the end of the corridor, she heard faint voices, angry, hurried arguing. She stopped just before turning the corner and listened. The intruders were frustrated. They hadn't found her. They were planning to retreat before security teams arrived. She heard one of them say, "The girl isn't here, but she has it. We need to find her before he does." Her stomach dropped. Before he does? Who were they talking about? Was someone else searching for her too? She didn't wait to hear more. When the voices faded, she continued forward until she reached the destroyed office door. It was smashed open, pieces of wood scattered across the floor. The room inside was a mess, papers everywhere, broken shelves, overturned chairs. And near the window, sitting against the wall with blood on his shoulder, was the billionaire, Alina. Rushed to him immediately. Relief and fear crashed over her as she knelt beside him. He was alive, but wounded. He told her he was fine, that it was only a graze. He had activated the alarm deliberately to scare the intruders off and buy them time. She helped him stand, and he gave her a faint smile. Telling her he knew she would come back for him, she showed him the keychain, asking if this could be the thing her mother left behind. His eyes widened, not in confusion, but in recognition. He whispered that he had seen it before, years ago, attached to her mother's bag. It wasn't just a keychain. It was a storage drive disguised inside a child's toy. And inside that drive, the evidence her mother died protecting, the truth that could expose everything. He looked at her with a seriousness she had never seen before and told her something that made her entire world shift once more. Your mother didn't just trust me, she trusted you. You are the only one who can finish what she started. Alina felt a mix of fear and strength rising in her chest. For the first time, she understood who she was. Not abandoned, not forgotten, chosen, protected, prepared for a truth bigger than herself. She helped the billionaire walk toward the exit as the alarm continued to echo around them. Whatever came next would change everything. The world she knew was gone forever, and ahead of her was a story she never asked for but was destined to face as they left the office. Alina tightened her grip on the keychain, knowing that the truth inside it was worth more than her entire past. She didn't know where this journey would take her next, but one thing was certain: her mother's story wasn't over, and now it was finally her turn to uncover the rest.